So there's the guy.
We are live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legislative Review Committee. Today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. It is a little bit after 1 o'clock, and we are in City Hall Conference Room 301B. And so we are going to start this meeting today with an approval of the Thursday, May 2nd minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we now have those approved. We don't have anything, public input on any item listed on the agenda. Do we have any public input on any item listed on the agenda?
This is tax allocation, it's going to be discussed at all.
No, not today at all. No, it's for the future. I'm not sure when that future will be. I mean, it's on the list in the future, but I'm just not sure which day it'll be.
So
Yeah, you can have that. You're welcome.
I was just here just in case.
Okay,
Y'all have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
You too.
yeah. See you, Michael. Okay, so, being that there's no public input, we're gonna move on to our, identified items of interest, and I'm gonna have, whatever your title is. Nikki Jones.
You were.
Like, blah, 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 manager. Nikki Jones, who will be here, introducing these items.
Sure. The first item is an item we've had on the agenda for some time. We passed one portion of it out of committee and has subsequently been approved by the mayor and commission. That is essentially changing the neighborhood traffic management program to the residential traffic management program to a more data-driven program. So the companion to that would be the voluntary residential traffic management program, which we have talked about for the past, I think, 2 meetings. And Director Bailey has worked on some of the changes that we were asked to make and is ready to speak to that. And I believe in front of you, you have a red line copy. And then I'm going to pass it over to Director Bailey at this point.
Thanks, Nick. It looks like we don't have a red line, we just have a clean copy, so I'll talk through the changes.
Sorry.
So the biggest thing that we were asked for, a few things. Number one, you all debated and decided instead of reaching 100% support from residents, you'd like to see 65% support, percent support. So we changed instances of that. So that's actually really similar to some of our other policies that are petition based. So you want to see that the majority of people are voting yes to this. And so each instance of 100% was changed to 65%. We also took out the language of needing 100% funding support. As you all pointed out, it doesn't necessarily need, it's really up to the residents on how they gather funding. It doesn't have to be that everybody pays into it. They make that decision. It's really, we don't get involved until we learn that they have the funding. We don't necessarily care how they get that funding. So that was struck as well.
Can I ask a quick
Yes.
question on that? So I'm guessing somewhere in here it still says that they need to fund it. just
Yes.
Not that they need 100% of everyone there to. fund
That is
it.
correct. And
Where is that said?
So at the very beginning of the purpose is it explains that it's a self-funded program, but then you're asking the specifics of funding.
I think it's on 5A, you have that. Is 65% of the affected property owners support the recommended traffic calming project and agree to fund the project.
Okay.
That's one. There is another 4B, maybe? 4B, yes, thank you.
Will include funding information.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
And that funding would be, and we made it clear that this would be a direct contract between the residents and a private contractor. And so we talked about how that would work, and staff's absolutely ready, and as sort of as a side SOP or standard operating procedure, we're ready to explain to them how to do that, how to find somebody to do this work. this, a side conversation that we need to have with attorney's office later that won't affect y'all voting on this policy. But we need to know how to set up something like a pre-approved list of vendors so that they're not starting from scratch, figuring out who they should call about this. To my understanding, there's really only 2 companies in Athens that do this kind of work, and we contract with them as well. But I want to make sure we feel comfortable with a pre-approved list before we. But again, that's all procedural. It doesn't have. It's what happens in the background. And then I think those were the 2 big things that y'all have asked for. So this clean copy is our latest version. I don't know if you had a chance to look through it, but if there were any other questions pertaining to it, I'm open to a back and forth here.
John?
Did we talk, I don't know if we talked about it, but if, 65% of the residents have to agree, the people that, if they don't agree, what if it's affecting their actual property?
Yes.
So that is written. Thank you. That is one more thing. It said everybody who will have an affected right of way need has to be part of that.
Where is that in this? I was looking for
It
that as
is
well.
4A.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so it says staff generated list of affected property owners and a list of any properties where right of way donation is required, and then the
It doesn't say, that just says a staff generated list. It doesn't say that they,
it says on 4C, it then says if right of way donation is required from any property, these specific property owner signatures of support must be gathered.
okay, good, good.
Forward.
Glad you brought that up, John.
And did we settle on if you have like 1 person owns 10 properties and 10 people own 1 property each for a total of 20 affected properties? What does that 1 person get 10 votes or 1? So that's just kind of discretion, I guess.
This is where it'd be good to have Tim in the room because there's a couple other programs where we do something similar, and I think it's each property gets a vote.
Mhm.
I have to double check that one.
I mean,
I would think it'd be each property.
I would think of, I mean, as much as the power that they have, if I were that property owner and I had bought, 50% of the properties on the
Right.
street, and then I was against it, but the other people were making 65% of the individuals, I'd probably be concerned about that, so I could see it being the reverse situation. So I think it's property owners, parcel.
Yeah.
Well, I'll double check on that with you to see what we've done in past, but I'm pretty sure it's per parcel. Each parcel gets a vote.
So,
Yeah, no.
so the contract, and I guess it's not really part of this, but I just want to understand how it would work. The contract would be with the property owners and the contractor.
Yes.
So what if it's this neighborhood that does not have a homeowners association? I guess they're forming a company, or how are they doing that?
So we talked to finance about that, and they said what they've seen in the past, the construction companies deal with this more often than we think, where there's multiple people who want something done. And so really, as long as they reach out to those companies, they'll work out. That's right.
And Stephen, how would we assure that these contractors are building to our specifications and that the contractors are indeed, just for lack of a better word, working and have past experience, if you will?
Yeah, great question. So as part of that 6A,
Right.
the very end of it, notice that there's an issuance of a right-of-way encroachment permit. That right-of-way encroachment permit includes, when you look at the fine details on that permit, includes the option to hold a performance bond. So that's one thing that we will absolutely require as part of these permits is a performance bond, making sure that when the work's done, it's done to our standard and that we can hold that bond and pull it if needed, if the work's not done to our standard. And then to what you were saying, Nikki, as far as knowing that these companies are legitimate, that's one more reason why I think we need that pre-approved list of contractors, because it could be a list that we vet. We know they have the insurance requirements and that have past performance. As we get sort of ramped up toward this program, we'll work to build that list. In the meantime, if someone calls and requests this program before we have a full list, we can also just vet, you know, on the fly, we can vet a company by talking to them.
Do we need to put anything about a performance bond in there?
It's because the right-of-way permit's stated there, that's a piece of the permit.
So this is sort of like a, you know, a development in a way. I mean, you have
It
the
is.
first sentence of this is professional engineering firm.
Mhm.
And so someone, and there's gonna be a professional engineering firm involved, and there's gonna be someone doing some construction on the ground project.
I would state that the engineering firm, we wrote it in there as needed, but it's, if it's just speed tables that they're asking for,
Oh, I see.
we have a technical standard, you know, that we can hand to them and they can go forth and build. Traffic engineering will continue to play the role of helping them determine spacing and location as needed. We can help during that initial discussion with the homeowners, we can do all that. If they are looking for something more than speed
Mhm.
bumps, a traffic circle or something, you know, some kind of
Okay.
other traffic calming, we would say that would need to be professionally engineered and you would have to first contact a professional
Mhm.
engineering firm to do that. But you're right, at that point, it really feels more like a private development process because our main role, we're not building it, we're not managing the project. We're really just inspecting it and making sure that it goes
Right.
per our process, just like we do with private development, just a little easier than private development.
I do I have a question for you in this, this is sort of the next, I don't know, it's what actually happens, but if I were someone in the public, I'd be like asking about it. I actually cycled through a neighborhood recently off of Whit Davis. I think it's Plantation Road, that kind of, you can go from Whit Davis over to Old Lexington. And there were speed bumps there, and I was surprised that they were not and this is just, I don't know that much about what you're doing lately with speed bumps, but they were not, they were rubber, they were
Oh, some of the old rubberized brands,
rubberized ones, and I thought, well, see, that's what I was,
those are old.
yeah, and I was like, oh, did this neighborhood do this themselves? And then I saw an official traffic sign, so I thought, well, you know, obviously TPW was involved somehow, even.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too far into the weeds, but that was an old way to do them maybe 6 or 7 years ago that is very labor intensive and doesn't hold up to time. Those rubbers peel up over time. So that's not our technical standard that we have in place now is
Okay.
the asphalt.
Okay, but I mean, when you said old, I was thinking really old.
Oh, no.
Because the ones in front of my house are asphalt,
Well,
and they're really old.
the next time that road gets paved also, those will be replaced with asphalt.
Oh, okay. They look, from the layperson's perspective, they look like really easy, like you just go out, buy them.
They have like 200 separate drilling pieces that they have to bolt in, and those bolts are incredibly hard. That takes a long time to install.
Oh, really? That's, you know, interesting. Okay,
We've got to approve the design. We're not just gonna have somebody come put this, traffic circle on some road that we don't have anything to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's gotta meet our standards with, safety, you know, emergency equipment, emergency vehicles and all that.
That's right. By the time you all see these, the concept will be vetted by traffic engineering. So when you see the agenda, when the agenda comes to you saying yes or no, mayor and commission says yes or no to approve this installation, you'll see that concept and see that it's had a stamp of approval from TPW.
okay.
I just have one other, maybe I'm thinking too much about a hypothetical that won't ever come up. But, in the case of absentee property owners, so, you know, what I'm primarily thinking of here with somebody who owns multiple lots is you have some corporation that owns multiple lots. They're not based out of Athens. They're unresponsive to their mail and email. A bunch of other people actually live on the road, and somehow this like absentee property owner can get in the way of things occurring just by being incommunicado. So is there any kind of either policy outside of this or anything in here that covers like the good faith effort is made to contact these folks and there's no response? Are they like, counted as an abstention, you know, or counted as a yes or a no? Because I'm guessing right now it's a default no, they're not affirmatively supporting it, right? So it's,
I mean, I'll let Nikki jump in a second with this. My initial thought is that those are the types of exception that mayor and commission would make, right? So if you all, someone called you and said, hey, look, we've been trying for a year to get through this voluntary program and we just can't get this person to answer. TPW is stuck to a policy, is right? Because you approve a policy, we stick to it. You all aren't necessarily stuck to the policy on a case-by-case basis. You could make an exception through an agenda, but I don't know.
How do we handle our sidewalk? Or maybe it's not the sidewalk program I'm thinking about, that we're looking at the other parcels.
It is a sidewalk.
For like petition purposes, we always follow policy. So if they do not reach that threshold, the 65% threshold, we've always said that's where the conversation ends unless you reach out to your commissioner.
Do we take into account the parcel by parcel and the ownership of each parcel, I guess is.
So that's what I was gonna check on with Tim, but I believe so, yes.
and to give maybe like a realistic idea that I'm thinking could occur, you've got some subdivision, it gets platted out, they build half of it, they go under. That half that's unbuilt gets sold to some other corporation. That other corporation is just some land holding corporation, maybe from another country, you know, they're just like not even, I mean, we actually have examples of that in our community in District 6 or whatever. You know, usually that land holding corporation, it's all kind of just one big chunk of property, so I'm guessing it's just gonna be counted as one vote at that point, but is there some kind of scenario where you can end up with?
I know that's a really unique situation, but I will say in that situation, my guess is that those parcels there are not being lived in, right? Those are, so the people who come for speed management would be the rest of the roadway.
Yeah,
So they can ask for speed humps along that portion of lived-in roadway and not even include the parcel down at the end that you're talking about.
It does say 65, and would that be 65% of the affected property owners?
That's
So,
exactly right.
um,
So there would not necessarily be speed tables in the unbuilt ghost town at the end of the road, but the speed tables could be in the lived-in section where people's kids are, and that those people would be the ones that are the affected parcel owners.
well, still feeling personally not thrilled about the idea of moving away from one person, one vote and moving towards one property, one vote. I get why we're doing that. So I'll make a motion to recommend this policy as drafted for the full body.
And this has one person, one property, right?
Yeah.
One parcel.
Yeah, that's the
One
default.
parcel, one
Yeah.
vote.
I'd like for us to be, if y'all could make a motion, if you want to move this forward, to ask us to be very explicit in the document to say that. So we don't have these.
well, isn't it what the document says there?
So the petition package that's sent out, that's where is it mentioned? 4A document package. One of those items will be the petition itself. And Nikki, I agree. The top of that, very top in bold letters, it should say exactly how the voting works in that petition.
Yeah.
If y'all are okay with that.
Yeah.
But, so the decision is that you're gonna add something here, or
Just
that it's?
clarifying language to, you know, that.
Yeah, right, okay,
One vote per parcel.
for parcel.
Yeah, and so you're good with that as a motion?
Yeah.
Alright,
Second.
all in favor?
I-
Aye.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, and I wanna reiterate again for the press that's here as well, that this is this program is self-funded, while the other program where we're spending our tax money is staff initiated and government funded with funding prioritization given to roadways deemed as in the greatest need of traffic calming based on safety data. So, I did have someone reach out to me personally about, who I think really thought that this was a new policy and didn't realize that it was,
Companion to the other.
right, that it was companion. Or at least I hope that's the case.
And if you may be getting calls soon, that we are putting in this year's round of speed humps right now in about 10 different neighborhoods. So they're getting toward the end of that.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
To everyone in your department.
I feel like you deserve a round of applause for like over a year of coming in about these.
I love hanging out with y'all.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Stick around, they must,
Yeah.
sell it was- Thank you.
Hey.
Right.
Welcome, Commissioner Thornton. All right, so we move on to the next item.
Yes, ma'am. And so I'm excited about this one. I'm a local government nerd, and this is a local government problem here. You know, it's fascinating, and I think you all will find it fascinating as well. So I'm not going to steal any of Suki's thunder. But it's my understanding that we've talked about this before. Suki's going to go through the history. But the mayor's assignment was for us to kind of revisit the solid waste residential collection zone or our approach to franchising. I do think you all will really appreciate this item, and Suki, Director Jansen, I pass it over to
That
you.
sounds so formal. Thank you. And Sarah, you can skip that one.
Okay.
Nikki's gone over that. So I'm gonna give you a little history. Some of you are newer commissioners and may not know some of the history of why we have solid waste structure the way it is. Right now, we are divided into the urban service district and general service district. And if you haven't been in Athens long, that's, we actually are structured how we were prior to unification. And so in the urban service district, you have to have residential trash service and you have to have Athens-Clarke County. In the general service district, you don't have to have residential trash service and you can choose between one of 5 permitted haulers. And so that's basically how we're currently structured. You can go to the next one, Sarah. And we're structured that way literally because solid waste was not expanded during unification. And the reasons we explored in our historical documents that are yellowing in solid waste files, because we had over 15, between 15 and 18 haulers in Athens, minus Athens Sanitation or Athens Solid Waste. We had, in addition to, we had 15 plus haulers. A lot of them were what I call foot packers, you all, which would be a pickup truck and folks that stand and push the trash down in the back of a pickup truck. And so we had a lot of folks that wanted to keep their foot packer, kind of mom and pop haulers at that juncture. So we did not unify or expand or retract any services. We just left it how it was at unification as far as solid waste collection went in the residential sector. So that's where we're still in that pre-unification structure. Next one. Here's a little bit now oh, yes.
A question just on the unification thing. Was there anything in the unification charter that indicated that we were going to expand this service countywide, or and maybe
Not to my knowledge. I can look
Okay.
back, not to my knowledge, Commissioner Myers. The folks that were in the general service district, my understanding, I was not a part of the conversation, but my understanding is they were very vocal and A, didn't want trash service, and B, wanted to keep the foot packer, the mom and pop pickup truck, picking up their collection. So I don't know that there were any, I haven't seen any promises made that we would expand the service. I will say though, when people call our office and if they've been here prior to unification, they often get angry with us and tell us, why haven't you spread out services or unified services or have more consistent services amongst the private haulers? It's one of the complaints. And that wasn't on solid waste. That was a decision made by the community at that time and the elected officials at that time.
Okay, thank you.
The history portion, what the omission here is, I've been with the solid waste department, it'll be 19 years in November. We have talked about franchising multiple times, but it never rose to the occasion of getting too formally to the mayor and commission. So I kind of wanted to demonstrate though what we have done when it comes to residential hauling. We passed back in 1994 the first pay-as-you-throw program, and that is where you can choose the size container, and actually that's works in the USD and General Service District. The haulers have to abide by that policy. The commission approved that pay-as-you-throw for customers in GSD, the general service. So both of them by 1995 were following the same containerized pay-as-you-throw program. In 2000, staff literally recommended what we have now again. So in 2000, I did find some early information that staff at that time said, let's stay as we are, which was kind of urban service district being serviced by Athens-Clarke County Solid Waste, and the general service district at that time by one of 14, 15, 18, however many haulers cropped up, that they said, let's keep it there and have non-exclusive franchises. They called it franchises. Back in 2000, that probably was okay. Really, it should have been non-exclusive, like permits. Really, we're just giving them a permit, not a franchise to what, like I would say in 2024, I'm gonna give you the definition of franchise in a future slide. We have a volume-based solid waste fee system. We changed that for the general service district. We added a 20 to 25 gallon back in 2011. 2011, we also had approved a waste minimization fee. In 2012, we have a cap now on franchised haulers from commercial and residential. So right now we have 5 residential haulers, and no other residential hauler can come in here and decide they want to start hauling. And that's important because at that time there were some murmurings that we were going to have Waste Management or somebody else come in, and some of the community members didn't want an additional truck in their neighborhoods. That was one of the issues, was having so many trash trucks and recycling trucks in some neighborhoods. 2019, what happened leading up to the line on 2019 is we had one hauler here in Athens, their customer service, and this happens, and this is often why I sit around this table with you all, we talk about franchising. One of the private haulers their customer service will go off the rails, like really badly. And they'll be like, they won't get picked up for months, or they'll have fees that they weren't transparent about in the beginning. And right before August 2019, that year leading up to 2019, when we were asked to do a presentation for zones, one of the haulers really had extreme customer service issues. And so people were calling us daily complaining about one of the 5 private haulers. So then the commission asked us to come and present at a work session. So we did that in 2019 about either expanding our services or having a franchise service. And then they also, the mayor and commission at that time, asked us to have community input meetings. So we had 3 external, meaning we had one at the library, one at the Unitarian Church, and one at Solid Waste, and then one internal that was for county employees that actually had, that lived here in Athens-Clarke County. We decided to do one internal and who had our services at their buildings, et cetera. We had some, we wanted to ask customer service kind of type questions. So we had 4 total. And I will say, it was mixed. The biggest and loudest folks at those meetings were typically folks in what is now Jesse's district that came out at the Unitarian Church. They do not want to be forced to have service, period. The self-haulers, which there aren't that many, we feel like there's just a few hundred. That's a number that if you want me to, I could probably explore to figure out exactly how many we have. But those folks came out and really were they didn't want to force to have any service. So we had those input meetings. At the same time, we worked with GIS and we put out a survey. We had over 1,000 folks participate in that survey. And it was a customer service survey / if there anything they want to change. At that time, we used that survey, you all, to implement our bulky waste request this past year and do the community cleanups that we have done for the last several years leading up to our request, because in that survey, it loud and clear the community want bulky waste pickup. So just to tell you, there were lots of elements of that survey, and one was that the hauler that led to this whole, in 2019, all that activity was one hauler having extremely poor customer service. And that hauler probably had more confidence in that survey than anything else. They were really complaining about the service. They were complaining about the costs to pick up roll carts if they canceled the service, all the hidden costs that this particular company was adding in. And and it was mixed. Some people wanted, the county, why can't you come and pick us up? Some, can we fire them? So we literally at that time did take what we had up to the attorney's office, and we just don't have the teeth in the current permitting to really do much with those haulers. So, sorry, I'm probably going a little much over history because there's so much history here, you all. And I'll add something else. Yes, Commissioner Culpepper.
So the 5 permitted folks, do they have a certain area that they do? Or
No, they can,
I mean, if they're unhappy with the customer service, why don't they pick another hauler?
and that's what we would tell them often.
So I mean, it's, it's the free market. I mean, if they're not having poor customer service, they're gonna lose business.
Correct.
So,
The trouble is, when this company does sometimes have the most problems, people have a short memory. And so they'll come back in and lower the price and then get customers back. And it's just a horrible cycle our community members get into. And you're right, has nothing to do with us. We just listen to them and say, hey, you've got 4 other private haulers you can choose from. But at that time, it was so bad. And there were there were roll carts left on curbs that code enforcement was having to get involved in because they wouldn't come pick up their roll carts. And I see Sherry's hand up there too. Sherry wants to talk about it. So go ahead, Sherry.
I just wanted to remind, because I think this gets your question too, if I remember correctly, and I think it's mentioned in your, one of the biggest problems was that this particular hauler locked people into these extraordinarily high expenses to come get your roll cart. So it's like, oh, you can terminate it, but it's gonna cost you like 160, I forget exactly what it was, but it was a very high amount. And so, people who are struggling or just don't wanna have to spend that kind of money felt trapped.
Correct. Sherry is correct. And they still have, and that's one complaint currently about the private haulers too right now. Some of the haulers charge extremely high amounts to in-service. And so like $50 a container or $75 a container. And when you have 2, that's almost more than you pay in, almost a year for some of them, depending on the size, in trash service. We just had actually a customer call yesterday and she was near tears and asked if she could bring the containers to us. We try not to get in the middle of it. That is not something I get in the middle of. I told her she really needs to communicate and contact the hauler and work it out with the hauler. She said, well, they might just show up at the Charm. That's when she ended the call with me. So we still have those issues, but we did the community input survey. And again, out of that came bulky waste. They wanted more leaf and limb service, they being the customers that did finish that survey, which is a little over 1,000. And then they did want some consistency amongst hauling. Did they ask for franchise hauling? No, but the way the survey was set up, we were actually trying to do more of a customer service. How can we fix our services in our service district, but also how can we pass along to the general service district haulers how they could improve service? And so then COVID hit, you all, and really this got tabled. And then the mayor, in the middle of COVID, we had a group of citizens again want to have franchising, wanted us to discuss franchising. So the mayor asked the Solid Waste Advisory Commission it was committee, now it's a commission, to take up the franchising conversation. So for the first time, and what I didn't tell you in the last 19 years is the past director tried to have conversations about franchising 3 different occasions. And it was painful, I will say. The customers that get the most upset are the ones that typically have no service and want to do with their trash what they want to do with it. And they can they get very angry, and it would often come back on staff. It was a very unpleasant place to be in solid waste when you have customers calling and taking it out on either the collectors or the staff that are answering the phones. So we never made it past just the discussions because those folks and the private haulers, they were upset. They don't want to lose their business. So a lot of them were very vocal as well. But there was still enough traction and enough input from the community that franchising needed to be discussed in a more formal setting and a more educated setting with maybe a motion set aside. So we actually, when we had the opportunity to go from a solid waste advisory committee to a commission, we pointedly set out to make sure we had at least one private hauler on our commission. And we have one private hauler on our commission. That's AAA Sanitation, Matt DePalma. And he does own a waste business here in Athens-Clarke County. And so he's been a part of all these discussions now from this point, since the mayor assigned it to the Solid Waste Advisory Commission. And what we did as a commission, I brought in experts on franchising. I have a consultant that actually is in Florida. She is kind of this region, when I say region, the Southeast region's kind of expert on franchising. She, for us, did a really nice discussion on why many communities franchise. And she did that for no cost for the Solid Waste Advisory Commission. And she did a great presentation. And then we had several other meetings that discussed franchising, the pros and cons, which we'll kind of go over again from those discussions. So after all that discussion, again, with community members on that commission and pointedly one private hauler on that commission, they recommended to move forward with zones or franchising in Athens-Clarke County. And so it went back to the mayor, and you can see up there, the mayor then assigned to you all, to the LRC.
Is that the community survey, 2019, is that still around somewhere?
I'm sure it is. I can get with Joseph, let me get with GIS, Commissioner Thornton, I will find out.
And my next question, I think you said there were probably about 1,000 responses to the
A
survey.
little over 1,000 responses. Yeah, a little over 1,000.
Can you tell what districts those responses come from by that survey?
I don't remember that we had a question about where, no, well, it wouldn't tell you what district. What we asked is if they had public service or private service. So I would only know if they're in the urban service district or general, so not district.
Very detailed question, but back to October 4th, 2011, the volume-based waste fee system change. The 25 gallon container is a smaller gallon, is it, right?
Yes, it's the smallest that's
So, but
offered.
that's not, so if I live in the city limits, I can choose to get that one to have
Yes.
a, right? And that kind of requirement is not required of any of these,
It is a requirement. Some of them choose not to advertise that requirement, or they'll tack on an additional charge. It is required of them. You can see,
okay.
it says on October 4th, the mayor and commission approved, that's a policy that you all,
Yeah.
well, the mayor and commission in 2011 approved a volume-based solid waste system change for the general service district. And we made them add a 20 to 25 gallon choice in their pay-as-you-throw in the general service district. So since 2011, they should be offering the 20 to 25. They don't often do. They won't offer it. It won't be on their website. You would have to know that it's there and request it. And some of them say they have it, and then there'll be sometimes what we've heard is they don't, and then we'll have to get involved, and I'll call that hauler and say, yeah, this policy was passed in 2011. It's the policy I have to send out the most to some of the haulers, reminding them that this was policy and they have to offer this to the
Is
general
there
service
any,
district.
is
Rate
there any,
differential?
well, I would hope
There is,
maybe is,
yeah.
but is there any choice one has on the recycling container size?
Not for the the general service district, we don't dictate what they collect recyclables in. So some do use what I call the old 18 gallon bin,
Yeah,
like
right,
bins, some use
yeah.
that. And then some use the 96 gallon recycling roll cart. So, but there's nothing that dictates size for recycling. And even in the urban service district, most of our customers get a 96 gallon. The exception is we do have some elderly customers and customers that have an altered ability, and we give them a 32 gallon if they call us, but we don't
Those
advertise
bins,
that
those
broadly.
bins are-
They're huge. Oh, the 32 are small.
Yeah, the little square bins, the
Oh, yeah,
rectangle
the
ones.
18 gallon bins.
Yeah, no.
They're small, but that's what we used to use in the urban service district. We had a blue one for paper and a green one for bottles and
Yeah,
cans.
no, I asked for a larger one and they were like, well, you can just get double one. And I was like, this isn't really encouraging on the recycling yet.
We don't have policy
Okay.
to tell them what kind of container to use in the recycling realm.
Got it.
And that's actually, go ahead.
Real quick, I wanted to address Commissioner Thornton's question related to the survey. So we do have a foundational survey, but we remembered at the very end of the presentation, you'll see next steps, and one of the questions is, resident engagement. So you remember what y'all said
Right.
at the last LRC's like, we should just talk about it at the very beginning, what kind of resident engagement we should do.
Mhm.
So if we want to do additional resident engagement on this topic, you just tell us, we'll go out and do it.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how the residents feel like that far north, Nowhere Road, Pelican Springs. Some people want it, some people don't. So I was just gonna look at the survey to see and make sure. I was just gonna do that on my own, but if we're gonna go that route, I definitely wanna make sure. And that's why I asked you where the comments were coming from. Because, it just depends on who I talk to.
Oh, and every place that does franchising, I'm gonna be honest with you, since I've been in solid waste for now 25 plus years, from the state level to here, franchising of any kind or expanding municipal service, it is a very difficult conversation. It is a conversation that some commissioners, that's the last decision they make, and then the people are unhappy with it or happy with it, or trash is, in many communities, it's the last utility they have control over, or the perceived control over. And so it can be a very difficult conversation for some folks to have it.
And I do think that, one of the concerns was cost, relative to city pay and the individual ones was an issue too. So I don't know, but I know in some of my past meetings, this has come up.
Yeah, and anytime, the more customers you have, typically the lower cost. And the issue for all of us is cost structure probably would change for all of us if we had assured customer base, meaning everybody had to have service, and then more customers, so those are some of the benefits of franchising for folks. Typically in places that have done it, the costs get better and the breadth of services get larger. So,
Well, I know there's many more slides in here, but just being upfront on this for myself, because that franchise, for the franchising, does it then become required? You can't opt out like now, people. Can't
correct.
opt out.
You don't, like for a franchise service, and we're getting off, but for a franchise, you don't want to have a franchise where people can one day say, I want trash service. The next day, I don't want trash service. And in communities like ours, where we have a tremendous amount of illegal dumping going on, typically franchising becomes a conversation, because what you start seeing is some of that illegal dumping goes back to folks not having services.
Right.
And so they will put it wherever they can, because they can't maybe afford it, or whatever the case may be. And so that's another reason a lot of conversations for franchising comes up, is because the prominence of illegal dumping.
Right.
But no, typically in a franchise, one of the harder decisions is you have to decide to make those self-haulers, like in the urban service district, y'all don't allow them to self-haul.
Right.
We already have so many inconsistencies. We don't let them self-haul, and we don't charge them our trash rate. When you look at our trash rates, when we get there, we embed our recycling one in there. I'm not saying I like that. I would prefer over time to pull out the recycling, so people clearly see the recycling cost. And the general service district, it's kind of hodgepodge. Some of them embed, most of them though, now what we found in the latest, once a year to twice a year, we do cold calls to all of, when I say cold calls, I can't call them. They won't tell me sometimes their rates accurately. So we'll get a resident calling from an address in Athens and ask what their services are and what their costs are. And that's when we get a clearer picture of what's really going on in the general service district. And some of them are charging, like you might see their rates in the upcoming slide, but that doesn't reflect recycling. They have a different charge or an add-on charge for recycling, and often an add-on charge for fuel. So, but here's one, I got ahead a little bit. Sorry, go ahead, yes.
And I don't want to take us too far down this rabbit hole. I just thought it was an interesting cul-de-sac you took us down there. So you said we have this recycling fee kind of wrapped into people's rates already, and you'd like to pull it separate. What you as director would like to do that? We're not currently doing that.
Correct.
What stands between your design?
Nothing.
result.
Nothing, we probably just need to start doing it, Commissioner
Okay.
Poole.
And we don't need to do anything as a commission to act.
No,
It's just
we
an
can,
administrative thing you can decide to do.
well, what I need to do though, probably in the next budget cycle would be all of our line items are intermixed. So like at the landfill, we started pulling out composting and last year and it's in its own, has its own line item. So I clearly understand the composting versus the landfill charges. I just need to do the same thing, to some degree, in that cost center.
Okay.
Thanks.
Going back to this, the urban services, just to let you know, again, we have about 10,000 customers. That includes curbside and backyard. We have backyard service for those that want to pay double the amount or for residents that can't physically move their containers out. And now we charge them curbside rates. They don't get that double backyard, but there are some folks in Athens that love the backyard service. They feel like it's a luxury service and they'll pay the extra just for the heck of it. So we do have I think it's about 600 customers right now that are backyard and some mix of luxury service / folks that truly need it because they are not able to pull their items to the curb. So we have 10,000 customers and they all have to have trash service. Everybody that has a single family home in the urban service district, they have to have trash. They have to have it from Athens-Clarke County Solid Waste. General service district, there's approximately 17 to 19,000 customers. And about 17,000, depending on where we fall here, which has been a conversation with GIS and myself, about 17,000 have one of the 5 private haulers right now. And you'll see that in a coming slide. But again, there are some haulers out there that do not have anybody for trash service. And they'll self-haul to the landfill or put their trash, wherever. I will say on the east side, what we see a lot and what anecdotally, I don't have, and this could be something too that we look at, apartment complexes that aren't gated, have a real problem with self-haulers stealing, I call it stealing
Yeah.
service. I look at it no differently than someone stealing from Walmart. If you're putting your trash in somebody else's dumpster and you do not have permission, you are stealing money from them because they are having to get an extra pickup and they're charging, all of us, even we charge it for extra pickup. Sometimes it's a hefty charge if we've already picked up once or twice or whatever. So we get a lot of, like Brighton Place. I had a long conversation with Lane Properties. They were very, he was very forthright about how much dumping he gets by what he terms self-haulers as well. So, I do know some of that is going on in the general service, especially on the east side. That's where I live, and that's where I end up having to see some of it and go and explore some of that. But go to the next one, Sarah. We can see our rate. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
On this slide right here, it's fascinating. I think I want to make sure I understand it. Within the urban service district, you must have trash service. In the general service district, you don't have to have trash service. And this is where we see a lot of our illegal use of them.
Right.
Transit ped cans and beyond, yes.
Well, the one thing you haven't mentioned, because up here, you mentioned somewhere in there, here it says residential, but when you were talking, you said single family. So how does this apply to multifamily and apartment?
It does not. It's, I think our definition of, and Sherry may have to help, I think it's up to, there's some quads that have what we consider residential service. There's some quadruplexes that are defined as residential service, but it doesn't, when you get above the quads, like our apartment, they're all commercial entities.
And
they don't fall under this.
But what are the rules about their trash?
Commercial?
Yeah, do they have?
They can use pretty much, except for the downtown CBD. Folks in the CBD, if they have to put their trash in a roll cart or on the curb, those folks have to use us. If they have dumpster or compactor service downtown, they can use a private hauler. And then outside the CBD for multifamily dwellings of any shapes and sizes, they can use whomever they want.
So they could, there's a lot of, like on Highland Park Drive, parallel to Cedar Shoals Drive, there's a lot of quads or duplexes or little townhouse units, and I'm not sure if they all have.
Most of those there fall under, I think, a conglomerate. They're actually defined as a commercial, and they can have now, some of them have to have service, and then that commercial entity has chosen the service. And then some don't, and I can find the reasoning on Cedar, because Cedar is like a patchwork on Cedar.
Right, because I know the guy from Joyner, he's probably talked to you, Chris Joyner, over there at what is it called? Cedar Shoals, anyway, it's right there by the, where that car wash is.
By Dollar Store.
Yeah,
Dollar
yeah,
General.
and there,
Mhm.
that place, they have a lot of illegal dumping. It's not too far in there, what's it called? Anyway, that's, I know that they have a lot of problems with that.
They do, and some of the busiest ped cans for residential waste are on Cedar Shoals Drive. Cedar Shoals, like you'll see a lot of like, I'm gonna put my kitchen trash in this transit can because I don't have service. Or I don't have bulky waste service, or I don't wanna pay more for the service that I'm provided. So you get a lot of kitchen trash along Cedar Shoals Drive in the transit ped cans.
Oh, okay.
Real quick, I can just confirm that what you said earlier is correct. The definition, the ordinance about what a residence means, which is like commercial property, is any dwelling unit that is a fourplex or smaller that is occupied by either an owner or a tenant.
Thank you, Sherry, thank you. Nikki, I think you had the
Yeah,
floor
no,
before.
Sorry,
Okay.
I just wanted to, I thought that was a fascinating point.
And the next, I just put our fees up. Again, these fees embedded in it are the recycling, and you can see our carts. These are the carts that we use at Solid Waste, and we do offer a 21 gallon to a 96, or if you are really trashy, you might have a combination of more trash carts. And then I didn't show you the recycling carts, but the recycling carts that we have are green and are the 96 gallon carts for the most part. Next slide. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Culpepper.
I was just looking at what they recommended, so they recommended the 64 to 96, right?
For
What the solid waste commission recommended.
Yes, yes. Yeah, they are. Now, we had, I will say, I'm glad you brought that up. There was a very robust conversation about pay as you throw. And we felt like staff has, most of our waste reduction staff, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, and the recycling division staff feel strongly about pay as you throw. They want all 4 levels, period. But in order to get this to move through SWAC, they felt like this should be a conversation. They felt like, you know what, we're not gonna die on cart size. They wanted it, wanted this discussion to be more robust. And so, because the private haulers don't like offering multiple cart sizes, carts are expensive, Commissioner Culpepper. And that when you have to keep a certain amount around, because at any moment you don't know what a customer may want, or if they'll grow, if they're growing or retracting, if they got college students that moved away, or our college students, when they come back in, they often get the 21 gallon for 5 people in a row. And then within weeks, they're like, oh my goodness, we didn't realize what 21 gallons would hold or not. We tried to tell them, we show them, we have a nice little display at the public utilities office, but they still sometimes choose because they see the dollar figure attached.
So what is being recommended
For the franchise or the zone hauling, we're saying a 64 or 96 gallon.
But,
So
okay,
That's just what the commission.
okay, I know, but I mean, like, here, there's so many people, I mean, when we get some of this stuff about housing and how many people are living in single-family homes and the small number of people, like, I use my recycling, but I use my trash. I am not a recycling, I mean, I recycle a lot, but I'm not crazy about it. And I don't get more than 1 bag a week.
He's admitting it here. I don't know, Commissioner Myers, now I'm disappointed. That's right, I'll take the green discussion down the hall.
You could go through my trash and find some things occasionally, I'm pretty good, but I mean, it's like the difference, you're telling me that on this franchise thing, and there's a lot of people in my neighborhood where there's 1 or 2 people, that they're gonna, the minimum choice they're gonna get is that 64 gallon?
Correct.
Man, that's like too much.
So this isn't recommending
This-
changing anything for what ACC is.
No,
saying.
but
This is
all
just
of- yeah.
Private haulers.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah,
it's,
so,
or
but this is
it
what
can be a
we'll be going
conversation,
through, a
yeah,
conversation.
that you all
Okay,
would
that's
have.
just something to think about as we move forward.
I will say it was one of the most talked about points. You've got some folks on the Solid Waste Advisory Commission that have strong feelings that they want these littler sizes in.
Yeah.
Then you had some that were, no, we feel like a 6496, we're fine with that to move this through. So I will say this was probably, that conversation probably took more of the time than
Let's
most
put a
of the other.
TikTok here too.
What do y'all mostly use?
For us, 64.
So that's the most
32
common.
and 64 are the most common for
Common.
us. Yeah, yeah. So if you're looking at our data, those two. And the least used is that little 21 gallon. I'm gonna have to be honest with you, the 21 gallon, my husband and I use that. There's just two of us, but I'm like what she just termed. She turned crazy recycler and composter. So I don't even put out mine every other week. My trash goes out every other week, and then recycling and compost everything else. So, but you do have to be very avid to get that smaller size, and it really is 1 to 2, 3 people if you're really good at, waste reduction and composting and recycling and.
But I don't think I have a choice. I mean, I think my choice is the 64 with my, is that what moves to the private haulers?
They have to, most of the private haulers are probably going with 96s or 64. I would say 96. 96 is, when you go to communities around the United States, 96 is kind of the standard roll cart for trash and recycling. And often it's too much capacity for a lot of folks.
Right.
It is, I'm gonna be honest. And I will say, even we have customers that really love the 32 and 21 because they can't fit the 96 into their garage, and they want to be able to pull it into the garage, because some of the garages, if you take Putter's Green, you guys know Putter's Green, that area, some of those garages are tiny. And so a lot of them over there like the smaller sizes.
Also, 96 gallons normalizes the idea that every week you should have that much garbage going to our landfill.
I don't.
Correct. And I'm just sharing, this is just for your knowledge. We went automated. So we have 4 automated trucks and 2 mini packers that are dedicated to our residential customers, the 10,000 plus customers. Just to share with you, I think we have right now 2 haulers in the general service district doing automated. The rest are still the traditional rear. 2 are the traditional rear load compactors, 2 are automated or moving that way, and then 1 is still a foot packer. We do allow 1 gentleman to still operate, and he just picks up trash in a pickup truck. And he's still permitted at this time, but I will say our ordinances specifically say you should have a truck can hold in the leachate garbage juice and not drip, and there's no way a pickup truck will not hold in garbage juice. But he has had that permit. Excuse me. Some of them don't once they get filled, but most,
I hate driving behind them.
yeah, most of them should. It's a plug issue, or downtown, if you have a lot of liquids.
Yeah.
I will say downtown we can bear it, like, we need to design a truck that can hold liquids differently downtown. There's so many people that don't finish their beers downtown, that it's very frustrating. So, but this is just to show you that. Here's the rates for the last time we did the rate.
Solid waste, finish your beer.
That's right, finish your beers.
Nothing would seem more Athens.
Now these rates were taken back in November, so they might not be the most up to date, but every November before we enter budget season internally for the departments, we want to see what everybody's charging. And you can see their monthly rates, but their monthly rates don't include recycling. The recycling rate is in the comments. So whatever the monthly rate is for all 4 of their levels, Commissioner Myers, they are giving us rates for the smallest container. And then you tack on in the comment section, the recycling rate, the recycling charge that they have. So this is, we do the quarterly reporting, and they self-report how many residential customers they have, how many commercial customers they have. So the accounts, you'll see AAA, how many customers they have, down to Waste Pro. And that's because they self-report to us how many residential customers they have and how many commercial customers they have, et cetera. That's where we get those numbers. All right, and then we'll jump into why we're here today. And I'm giving you the definitions now. We call what we do currently franchising. We are not franchising, y'all. It's an old term. I want to get in the ordinances. We are permitting those 5 haulers. We allow them to operate in the general service district with very minimal oversight. So on today's terms, it would be called a permit. Right now, we call it non-exclusive franchises. We have 5 haulers that are given a permit. Every year, they actually pay a fee to renew their permit, which the fee right now is either $100 or $200 a year. And then we have to see their insurance to make sure they have proper insurance. And we have to see their trucks and to make sure that they have the proper lights and signage, so that they're as safe as we can see as they're going around our communities. And they must follow our current policies and procedures in the general service district. Exclusive franchises, we do not have. An exclusive franchise typically is when one or more haulers have exclusive operating rights per an area or zone in an area, in a community. And they have solid waste standards that they have to meet. And often the municipality acts as an agent, their customer service or billing agent. And they send, that municipality sends out a request for proposals and gets the proposals in for the services they want. Like if they want trash, recycling, bulky, leaf and limb, they specify the services they want and the frequency of those services. And then that hauler through an RFP process will give prices. And then also when you send out an RFP, often what these communities are doing now is they have very strict customer service components, meaning if a hauler, for example, in Gwinnett, if Gwinnett, I think still has Republican Waste Pro, they went through franchising to get there, and they have hundreds of thousands of customers, a lot more customers than we do, and they have 2 to 3 haulers. I think they started with 3 and they went down to 2. If Republic misses a pickup 1 week, they can get fined automatically.
Which is why.
And when Republic, and I'm just gonna, I would say, when Republic got the contract in Gwinnett, if you look back at the timeline, when we had some struggles here with some haulers, they stopped doing service in Athens for some of our customers because they were trying to protect their franchise in Gwinnett. So they knew if they needed more trucks in Gwinnett, there was no consequences to them here in Athens.
Yeah.
So they could actually provide very poor service to our customers, and they knew they could. And when we tried to call them and say, hey, we're getting lots of complaints, or the mayor and commissioner are getting lots of complaints, they knew that because they were trying to make sure they didn't get fined in where their bread and butter is, where they have that long-term franchise, which happened to be at Gwinnett at that time. And so an exclusive franchise is typically the municipality is trying to get the best rates possible and the best services for their customers and consistent services for their customers, their residents, through an RFP process. Typically is what an exclusive franchise is. Most of them try to get very few haulers. I'm gonna be honest with you. Most of them try to get down to 1 or 2 haulers for thousands and thousands of residents. If we just started Athens today, if we just opened Athens and said, I'm gonna make my community today, how are we gonna pick up trash, y'all? Athens, in the residential sector, we would have 1 hauler, y'all. And I'm not saying it's a county hauler. I'm just saying, when you see the next meeting, I'm doing a comparative analysis, staff is for you all. You're gonna see the sheer quantity of customers like Columbus has, and they have 1 hauler. The sheer quantity of customers Macon Bibb has, and they have 1 hauler. I mean, we're talking double and triple what we have here in Athens. And so you would do that, so you have 1 hauler in your neighborhoods. Like I live on the east side. Every day of the week, we have haulers in our neighborhood picking up trash or recycling. Monday through we have. And so what you try to get to is like all your zones, there'd be 1 day. And that's what you try to get, like in an ideal world, if we just started Athens. But we didn't just start Athens, and that's why we're talking about franchising versus what we have right now, which is permits. So that's kind of, I just want to give you those terms because we don't really call them, in the business, we call them the non-exclusive and exclusive franchises. All right, next one. I'm sorry, I'm running. I think I'm out of time. This is my last slide. Why we went down this path. These are some we grouped together the reasons that off the survey or in other communities why they went down this path, and then off that survey that we did in 2019. Why you talk about franchising is you want consistent service and messaging. For example, that's for all of their markets. And every few months, we'll have them sending out information. Oh, we can't recycle glass. Well, you can in Athens. They shouldn't be sending that information. It leads to, and we try to encourage them to use our education and slap their own logo on there. But a lot of them don't want to. So there's a lot of inconsistent messaging out there. So when you franchise, you diminish the confusion, and that actually has proven to reduce contamination in composting if you have it, and or recycling. And emissions from having fewer trucks on the road every day. Litter, I'm going to tell you right now, our trucks and all the private haulers, there are times that things blow out of a trash truck. Some of them aren't made with fail safes that you don't have litter flying out. So the less trucks franchises to add more clean fuel trucks to their fleet. Gwinnett County, y'all, is going to be the first county in the state of Georgia. They ordered 15, I think they arrived, 15 electric garbage trucks. So they'll have 15 over there based out of the Oak Grove landfill. If they're not already arrived, they were set to arrive pretty soon. So those are the kind of things that you can actually finagle in a franchise, or what I have seen finagled in a franchise. Waste reduction goals are always higher in communities that have franchising because you have consistent recycling messages and you have haulers that have to use the recycling infrastructure in their community or compost infrastructure. And so they usually always have better diversion rates, and potential for expanded waste reduction services is a lot easier. Accountability measures, I dictated through the RFP or contract. I told you the example of tacking on extra fees if they miss your, are always better in an RFP or contract. So those are some of, and what I didn't put in here, because it didn't rise to the level though, but across the country, illegal dumping has been on the rise, and a lot of communities that experienced a tremendous amount of illegal dumping have looked at franchising, especially if they have a lot of self-haulers. Self-hauling, you all, is a really rural phenomenon. It's really unusual for me to go to a conference and they're asking me, are you urban, suburban, or rural? And I'm like, we're mainly urban. And, you know, and so do you have one hauler? No, we have, you know, I tell them that we have, and then then you don't have self-haulers if you're, no, we have self-haulers. What? You know, and again, if we just got to start Athens, it would look differently on the solid waste side, but we know we're not that way. Also, when you do a franchise, that you can dictate in the contract that I want once a week, and Gwinnett has this, y'all. There's some cool things you can do. You can have once a week where you have a roll cart and you can put all your leaves in there. And then the only thing that boom trucks that we currently pick up leaf and limb is just the big stuff that can't fit in a container. Weekly bulky waste in some communities, they require that from a franchise. Weekly or bi-weekly recycling. Sometimes you see recycling pushed to bi-weekly, and then trash weekly. So you can dictate what services you want, and so that'll move the needle on the price, of course. But why you wouldn't? Those are and I could be probably, because I get excited about trash, I probably could give you a lot more whys, and I think you'll see some of them in the comparative analysis next meeting. Why not? Because it's like Commissioner Culp, it's not an open market at that point. It's like your water, it's like your cable used to be, or any other utility. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice for electric, you don't have a choice for water, you won't have a choice for solid waste at that juncture. Residents here in Athens have relationships with their current private haulers. And so the public perception or rejection of eliminating customer choice, that goes back to not an open market. And the most difficult thing I'm going to tell you, what has historically brought people out to your meetings, is when you tell them that they can't self-haul anymore. We have a dedicated group of about 20 folks that will come to every meeting. If you even mention getting rid of self-hauling, they will come out and they will tell you that they want to be able to take their trash wherever they take their trash. And that happens. And if I did research for you all, that happens a lot in communities where they still have allowed self-hauling. So mandatory trash and recycling services from single family homes, though, has to be required, you all, for a franchise, because you can't have, nobody's going to want a contract from us where they don't have a solid customer base. We're going to say, hey, you have 30,000 customers. You will always have 30,000, minimally 30,000. Could grow, that even, you know, piques some of their interest, but you don't want it to where, you know, one week Commissioner Thornton has, next week she decides she doesn't. I want, you know, they have to have, you know, there's not a franchise. Now, I will say, the Solid Waste Advisory Commission, they want to have a modified franchise, not one. They would like to keep, and I don't know, this is going to be a conversation that I have with the attorney's office, and we need to talk to some, they want to protect those 5 residential haulers somehow and do zoned. So that's what 2 is basically what I've brought to you. They want to keep the 5, they want to keep Athens-Clarke County and the 5 private haulers, so 6 haulers for, you know, roughly 30,000 customers, I guess. And those 6 haulers would get a zone. So we can eliminate some of the the non-benefits for having all these trucks in there by having what I would call maybe a modified zone franchise or contract with these 5 haulers. I will say one of the 5 probably wouldn't be able to have a piece of the pie just because of the equipment he has, would be a struggle for that one. So, but that could be a conversation on, there are still, we don't control junk hauling. We have a lot of junk haulers in Athens that are still needed as students move out at the turn and have a lot of materials that they get rid of. So there could be some options for the one hauler that probably could not, in a franchise, or if y'all make this strict, you're gonna want trucks that at least at least you try to keep the liquids in with proper seals, and you try to keep the litter in with the proper compacting equipment. This particular hauler would not be able to meet those basic standards of
And I'm
collection.
sure that he's mine.
Well, he's anywhere. He's
Where
anywhere.
he's mine. I know.
Okay.
I'm looking at the list. He's definitely mine.
Okay, yeah. And well, if you know them, yeah, and he's amicable doing other things though. He is amicable to like being a junk hauler if we could work with him. And there's some other haulers on the list that would be willing to pull him in to work with him in a pie piece or a zone in Athens. So that's what the Solid Waste Advisory Commission, they would like to see nobody put out of business. And they would like it zoned from a legal perspective. I think that's gonna have a legal check to see if we can do that. And we're trying to do right now is find an example where that was done. So we're looking for that as well.
A question. I'm assuming that the Johnson and Son may be someone who actually lives in Athens. The other four, are you gonna give us information in another session on how big these companies are?
I can.
Because you just mentioned that Waste Pro and Republic have the contract with Gwinnett. So, I mean, I'm just like,
AAA is pretty big too.
AAA is pretty big,
AAA.
so and I don't.
We call
so-
AAA and curbside, we call them, they're mid-sized haulers.
So-
And then,
From here.
and they're in the area, they're in Coney County, both of them, I think, reside proper in Coney.
Madison.
Or
Right,
Madison
or
and
what
Coney. Curbside's out of Coney, and then
Yeah.
AAA's out of Madison. You're right, you're
Right,
correct.
and how big we are in terms of their business.
Like what percentage of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have that information, but
I can ask
Yeah.
and see if they will share that information.
Is there a reason why we would wanna, I mean, you noted how small we are compared to other places where places that are even larger have only one. I mean, is there a reason why we wouldn't wanna just set up, one or two zones, and then these private haulers can compete in that private market instead of the current private market? I mean,
That
it's
is-
a
that
different
is-
type of competition, but it's still, it sounds like competing.
It's gonna be that is a political question, Commissioner Hull, because I will just tell you, there are gonna be people upset that their hauler or their perceived hauler would not be able to even have, that would be up to you all. But certainly, what you're gonna see in the comparative analysis, that's the path that some of these municipalities went down. They were like, we want the best rates possible. In order to get the best rates, it's like one singular hauler or two at the most. In some of these areas, you'll see.
So in your notes, it said that there would be an extension of solid waste and y'all would handle the customer service.
Well, we could, we don't have to, but
That would mean y'all have to hire more people, right?
potentially, we're not that big of, I'm just telling you, we're not that big of a county. And I don't know that we would really have to. It depends on if we could continue to use the water bill for our billing, as our billing agent, then that would be a bonus and we wouldn't have to hire more agents in solid waste. But I think billing would probably, at least on our side, would have to have one more full-time staff member. But as far as customer service, I don't know if we would. There's a lot of things we're doing in customer service, especially in solid waste and around the country. Some of it's getting automated a little bit better. They don't necessarily need to talk to us now. And solid waste, we will talk to them. They can get us by pushing zero. But I think what you're gonna see too, we're gonna be rolling out something for leaf and limb that makes it a little different, the interface, but it's gonna make us more efficient, and we'll have some pretty substantial environmental benefits. So I think I don't want to speak yet. If you wanted solid waste to do the customer service, and I can do an analysis to see if we would have to hire more. And what we'll do is, what we were asking out of Macon and Greenville, we asked them how many. We asked them first if they do customer service or if it gets sent directly to the private hauler. Most of them right now that we have actually asked, the municipality does the customer service, and they don't send it, because some of these haulers are national and international, and some of their call centers are pretty cumbersome to get through. And so what we have heard from a couple of municipalities, they chose to keep the customer service in their community, people they know, numbers that they recognize, so they have more control over the customer service portion of it. But I can give you examples where they didn't, where the private hauler handles everything. So.
Cause you've got 10,000 customers, there's 19,000 in the general service district. I mean, you'd be doubling your customers if you were handling the customer service, so you'd have.
Correct, if we were handling the customer service, yeah, and that's if the public utility, this is one component too, I have not talked to public utilities, is when we go down this, are they still willing to, we bill through the water bill. And so those private haulers do not. They send, like, I get a bill through the mail, or I do direct deposit, they directly bill me. But they still send me a paper bill through the mail, and that's the way some of them do it.
So
Commissioner.
I have to imagine, public utilities isn't here, but almost everyone who's not being serviced by our solid waste is being serviced by the water department. So there's already a bill going to these people.
I just don't want to speak for them.
Sure, yeah, but it's like, we're not asking them to take on, we're not asking public utilities to take on 17 and
No, I'm
19,000
talking about
customers.
phone calls, though, people calling them.
And so then for the phone calls question, I would guess also the same way solid waste is a enterprise fund. And most of the positions in solid waste are funded through the enterprise fund that's, funded by our customers. I'm assuming then that if there were a need to hire X number of staff, that could be part of the money
The
collected through
RFP
that.
process, we put it through the RFP, but like say that we need to.
So we wouldn't need to add more general fund expense, in other words, to cover whatever added burden that there is here.
I think you
just
could,
include
if
that in
you
the RFP.
craft the RFP,
Yeah.
like some of these communities have, that want to retain the billing portion or the customer service, there would already be a known fee that has to be.
Yeah.
And then what they're asking for the private haulers is what it costs you just to collect that material and dispose of it, recycle it, compost, whatever you're asking them to do. That's the fee they're gonna give you. And then, yes, the municipality can add their administration fee to the collection fee.
Suki, as we're getting close to
So that-
finishing up, and I'll go to Commissioner Thornton in a minute here. But in terms of next steps, and you might be wanting to address this as well, in that, we're talking a lot about the effect on the customer and the effect on the business, on the haulers, but this, I also want to make sure that you're including in here more in-depth information on the effect on our landfill and how this, so we're talking about the immediate impact, but what long-term impact would this have in terms of extending the life of our landfill and also the cost to the community on that with the recycling. And the other thing, and the residential engagement, I think there does need to be some, so I just want to bring that up. If for anything, that this is a major change and the engagement will be one way of educating the public that we're actually thinking about this and discussing it. Commissioner Thornton.
You said that there are some communities that already have a policy. Maybe I should be asking Sherry, but is it possible for us to get some of those a sample policy of how people are wording their franchising? Is it possible to
We probably could, I'm sure, I mean, we could ask, I can find out, I don't know how.
I think they'd be subject to a record if they weren't willing to provide it.
And that might be in that, some of that hopefully would be included in the comparative analysis. You'd be going to those contracts.
We haven't asked for the language, we would just,
Okay.
we can go back, we have the right people to call now, so
Right.
we can always go
Yeah,
back
that'd be
and
good.
see, and like Sherry said, it might be an open records
I,
request. We
you
don't.
know, and again, I guess everybody's figured out who my trash collector is, but, I know he was very, vocal a few years ago when we were talking and very involved, and I think that, and I haven't talked to him personally, I think, you know, he's getting older now and things have changed a little bit, so I think, just having his input for me would be helpful, but I don't think he would fight something like this, you know, push back if a change came.
I can't speak for him, because he has historically been, but you are right, that's been several years
And he might,
ago
right,
now.
and the accounts are, I mean, it's a very small number, but he might be at a different place. Since
Yeah.
I've just been learning about the great tsunami in the workforce
Mhm.
development task force. Who might be part of that?
Just two comments. Is there an option to put more teeth in our existing permits? Where you can still
Maybe, I think
pick-
I'd have to talk to Sherry,
where they could pick their hauler. They have to meet these certain requirements, but you can pick who you want.
I don't,
Or is that
I don't know the answer. I've not seen, I don't know. I'd have to ask, see if we could. We've tried to, the way it's written right now, we'd have to do a lot more. I'd have to see some examples of where, you're talking about if the customer service somehow,
Right, so you've got 5 permitted haulers.
okay,
And they have to follow these standards. You know, they have to, and, you know, you can have language in there about the, what you call it, end of service clause. Where that's holding, they're being held accountable for keeping good customer service. So, you know, it's a year contract or whatever it is, but the language is certain where, or worded so if they need to get out, a customer can get out if they need to because of crappy customer service. So they're being held accountable for the way they run their business. And then I would think, before we go too far down, I think we ought to do the customer survey before,
The resident.
yeah,
Resident.
get their input and
Yeah.
make sure we're going down the right road that what our residents want.
Yeah.
gotcha.
And on that, I just have one more thing for informational purposes. I don't know where those, I think it was about 2,000 of the 2,000 residents were not using, you know, were self-hauling. And,
Approximately, yeah.
right, and, you know, over on our east side, right, I'm out often in the very rural parts. And is excluding them an option? I mean, if you think of everything down on Morton Road and out on Belmont and I'm sure there are similar things in the western part where is that where there are more self-haulers? Is that less efficient for the haulers themselves? I mean, some of those things are quite, you know, far apart and I don't.
Anything in Athens, I'll give you my professional opinion.
Okay.
That there's nothing in Athens that, nothing's too far apart for,
Okay.
for residential collection in Athens.
I will be nice and take it.
So, and I will say, if you start to exclude, you're gonna, it defeats the purpose of a
Okay,
franchise.
okay.
If you start to, because they're customer based. Now, you could have some, and there might be some out there, we can start asking too if there are exclusions in more rural areas of their community. But that's when you start exclusion, what's attractive about a franchise is quantity of people in a relatively dense area. When you split up, if you were to split up Athens into the 5 pieces, you know, you're gonna have, honestly, there probably wouldn't be one single hauler, not even your hauler, Commissioner Thornton, that wouldn't want, oh, I could be in my piece, and I'm just,
that's
you know, you can make all right turns, you can, it's so much more efficient than, okay, well, today I gotta run over here, but this customer really wants picked up in Commissioner Hoole's district, now I'm gonna come over here to Commissioner Myers, you know, it's like now, some of them, they try and they do a good job, but if for some reason somebody has asked for something special, or they're still zigzagging to some degree, and so if you could, you know, and that's what the commission kind of would like to see. That's where I needed to talk to the attorney more. They would like to see pie pieces, but everybody, but I will say the commission and even the private hauler that's on there, They want to see self-hauling removed. They want a definitive customer base that they know that they can set their rates on, not their rates, because the rates are gonna have to be agreed upon through a proposal, but they can set their capital expenses on, they can set their operational expenses on, that I'm not gonna have to, every quarter, I got 5 people coming off and 20 people going on, and that's what they have right now. And it's hard for them sometimes to base, some of their operational needs on those models, excuse me.
Well, I know you think about the environmental impact a lot. I mean, you talked about the impacts on road wear and leachate getting out and everything too, but you think of the carbon impacts, you have all these trucks going all over the place instead of a set area. And instead of one truck who's going by the house anyway, just picking up a can, you have someone else making their own separate trip all the way out to the landfill.
Right,
And while some of them might live near the landfill, plenty of them, as Suki said, live out on the west side, they have to go clear across the county. So I just don't think from any given angle, it's more efficient environmentally, cost-wise, for the customers, for the haulers to.
And I will say, we did get away from it, but at the landfill too, we are encouraging more of our residents. It's unsafe for residents to be on the working face of a landfill. Now we're making most of them dump in, although some of them get a little cantankerous with this. But also, we really don't know where some of our trash is coming at the landfill. So one anecdotal piece of information would be if we have a solid franchise in Athens, and we know one hauler doesn't have any residential in Athens, they should not show up our landfill, because right now, there are some haulers. Let me just say that Oconee County says that they produce about 1,000 tons of trash. That's what goes to their transfer station. 1,000 tons for all of Oconee County. You know where most of their trash is going? Athens-Clarke County landfill. When they cross the scales, when we ask, they're not being truthful where it's coming. They might have Clarke County mixed in with it, but we know we're getting.
They can truthfully say, yes, some of this did come from.
Correct. And so we don't have any way to say, but I can tell you right now, we get a substantial amount of Madison County and Oconee County trash at the Athens-Clarke County landfill. That's only supposed to be for Oglethorpe and Clarke County. And there's not much we can do at this juncture because we have so many haulers. I mean, if they do pick up 5 stops, then. So I will say with franchise, also it helps know where flow of the funding is coming from.
And if it's coming from counties that don't have recycling, you're also getting a bunch of what could have been recycled material mixed in.
I just want to say it's 2:33 here, so I wanted to see if we wanted to, because I know we all have lots of questions on this, but we will have other opportunities moving forward.
Yep, so those are the next steps. But Commissioner Culpepper heard you and make a good point. Do we want to go ahead and do a survey before we continue to go down this path? And if so, are there questions that you all want us to kind of pull out from customers, residents?
I would really like to see the first survey.
We can bring the first survey the next time. Is that, would that work?
That was in 2019.
Yes, 2019, fall to August to September of 2019.
I'd say, my inclination here is that we are going to make some changes and having some outreach and input on some of the variations of those. It would be good to get information on. Like I said, maybe we would come back and find out that most people are, saying they don't want anything at all. But I would imagine that we get more input just in terms of direction. But as I said before, just in terms of education of the public about sharing information about what we're thinking about.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm suggesting, for me personally, I just like to see what the survey look like because a lot of my constituents get really confused just doing different surveys. I just want to make sure.
Oh, to see what it looks like before we say.
Yeah, I'm not saying use that when I'm saying to see how it's worded and make amended changes as needed. I didn't take the survey, so I didn't see the survey.
That would be, I hope Jess. Yeah. The front end. I know I have the back end. I saw the dashboard still up. I hope I'm looking for the actual version, but I'm sure it's there somewhere.
The community input survey that has already been done, and it's only 5 years ago, not even, that that was used to inform the work that SWAC did.
That was used to, at that time, what we were asked to do was to kind of take the temperature of the community to see how solid waste customer service, both in the general service district and urban service district, anything that was missing, anything that they felt like needed improvement, from leaving them to, leaving up on their bulky waste, and then, residential collection. So it wasn't, Commissioner Hall, it wasn't saying, hey, we're thinking about franchising here. It was more of that one hauler, the wheels had fallen off their customer service. And so the mayor commission at that time wanted to see what all customer service needed to be changed, both in the urban service district, though, and general service district. So if I recall, most of the questions were more customer service, and then what services were absent that they would like to see implemented. So, but I can't remember all the questions. I apologize, y'all. That's
okay.
Yeah.
We'll bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, because it does sound like, you mentioned earlier, it didn't really address this issue.
It didn't do it correctly.
Right.
I don't think there was a question that says, do you want franchising? Because that word is fuzzy. And, I don't know if people would even know what franchise is. And I think now that I'm talking about it, I think we even discussed it. Like, how can we have that question? People don't even recall what we have now, franchise. Are they going to think like that's the same, and so I think we discussed, and then really at the time, a couple of the commissioners really were just struggling with some of the customer service issues we were having with the haulers.
I'll just say, we can do a survey if people here want to, but I think we've got pretty good array of facts here from a bunch of different questions. And we have the community survey that was done back when one of the haulers really wasn't performing, and we know why that was. I think we overestimate how often the people taking surveys truly understand the same facts that we're trying to have assessed in a survey. I think we underestimate how biased or skewed the responses to surveys are when it's like an opt-in survey. We tend to get people of one disposition or another, like dominating the numbers of that survey. And I think we also underestimate how different someone's opinion would be a year later or a year prior. So like in this given scenario, word gets out that we're doing a survey, you might suddenly see all the haulers do a much better job while that survey is happening. So I just,
But
if we can do a survey and send staff through the months of work that would be, I don't know how much that's really going to give us information.
We're talking about 19,000 people that this would affect. There's 19,000 people that live in that district. I think we owe it to them to get their opinion.
Yeah, and I think you could use it, I'm looking at this, if I was making this survey. Some of this information I would be putting right into the survey. Sometimes the surveys, like I said, like what do we currently have, and what are the franchise opportunities, thinking of the wording and changing it to make it real, like user friendly to the average person, and then going through the whys and why nots. And even if there's, even a little bit of information on this is the norm in communities our size in Georgia. So that it's not some bizarre, like it sounds to me like we are the exception, right? So, I think it's helpful for people to know that what we're doing is not the norm, the way we have it. So, for me, I see it with my constituents as a way to inform them about what's going on. This is going to be this is right for my newsletter, like to go over what is in there, but I think getting this out to as many people would be helpful. I know that you are back to the animal pet license, discussion.
No, it's like, having knocked on doors in every neighborhood in District 6, I can tell you that there is a perception that the county didn't make good on its promise of unification, and the two things that came up the most were sewer and solid waste.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a pretty good chance that we will see in a survey the smaller portion of people who really want to keep self-hauling all make it a point to fill out that survey. But everyone who, like in the abstract, would like to see themselves be a part of the county service.
Well, one of
district,
the
may not feel as passionate about recognizing that this survey is gonna save them $1 on their trash bill.
Yeah.
You know,
But I think that having a question on there, I mean, unless, right now, self-disclosing, do you self-haul, do you use just, which service do you use? And just informational purposes would tell us that because, unless we have a really, AI is working, as the plan to overwhelm this with, we already know that what the percentage of self-haulers are basically. So we can.
Right, it fluctuates.
Right, but we can get an idea whether or not,
And I think on that original survey, y'all, we did ask that question. I'm remembering now, we did ask self-haul or public or private. That
yeah,
kind of,
right,
you know,
right. So I think that information would be there and allowing us to sort of, discriminate in how we analyze what comes forward.
That's a good point, though. The survey needs to go to the people in the general service district, not the urban service.
Yeah.
Because they already have our ACC solid waste. So they don't know any different. So the survey would need to go to the folks in the general service district.
I guess I agree with, Jesse on all the surveys and stuff, but I think this one is important. For the reason you said, the disappointment that many folks have had because of the education. Folks have actually checked out of the government. And I think the other thing is our job as commissioners to do some footwork and legwork to make sure we get that input from folks that are disengaged or, people are very disappointed with government. And I think that the worst thing we could do is make major changes and not really tell people what they want for their tax dollars. But I don't think the survey by itself is going to get us where we need to go. I think that commissioners got to say this, especially in those GSD areas, like you mentioned a couple of peppers said, they're just checked out. So either we as commissioners step up and promote this survey and make sure we get time responses, and not only get the responses, but to educate people, like Commissioner Myers said, it's education and getting information. And I just don't think we've done that very effectively.
Okay. The next steps, we'll bring comparative analysis, we'll bring the old survey, we'll let y'all see the old survey. And maybe there's some tweaking to that we would do later, and then maybe we'll talk about new questions for the new survey, but just to give y'all an opportunity to see the old survey, and maybe that might.
Yeah, I
generate some
just in
good
terms of
conversation.
speed, without it being too cumbersome and taking hours and hours. I just imagine that you could pull that up and knowing everything and knowing the way this is up your head right now, that you could put together an early draft of what you would think would be on it, would be helpful. And just without spending like an inordinate amount of step time, because I don't want us to be putting this off and saying, okay, now we're gonna wait for another month, and we're gonna wait for another month to reply, because I know Commissioner Wright talking about this, and I agree that this is a month discussion, and we want to get through this really well. Everyone here is involved in it to the end, so I want to make sure that we get through and make our recommendation by perhaps around November on that, so we'll be moving forward.
maybe with a clear, maybe staff can bring a clear goalpost on what the purpose of the survey is. Right?
Yeah.
Since the last one clearly had a different purpose than.
And could you also bring us the information, when you find the information in the unification documents that have to do with services? I would like to see that, and maybe send me the link to that. I know it's probably, I would just,
And we also want to make sure we get, if there's any samples of any other county's policies.
we'll call them these, but. July meeting, I assume we're not having a.
I'm not
July.
going to July.
So that moves us to August, and, so the date in August to confirm for the next meeting, what would that be?
It would be August 1st if we stick to the first Thursday.
Um,
But that's up to y'all.
I used to be able to be here on the first, but I could be late.
Do we have a date on the retreat yet?
Not confirmed. I think there was some needs to change some dates on it.
August 8th then?
Which was probably going to do it the same week.
No,
Okay,
the
yeah.
retreat was gonna be at the end.
I think it's gonna be later, yeah.
Couldn't be here the first.
Yeah. And then,
Okay.
you know, we could bring some cake and cupcakes too, because it's my birthday. so-
If you attempt to say, when was your birthday?
It's 8/8. Yeah, so, you know, we could make believe it's,
Did I wish you not a happy birthday?
1 o'clock.
um, August 8th. Yes.
Mm.
No, no, I just feel like I was at another meeting, or we were talking about meeting.
Okay, so we're done the 8th. Yes, ma'am.
We're bringing Carol birthday gift.
No.
Showering our chair and
Right.
cakes to keep her humble to all of our things.
I feel like it would be great to have cupcakes with sprinkles on them, like an LRC. Oh,
1 p.m.
Gotcha.
yeah. All right, a motion to adjourn this?
Yes, I'll come in.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I'll be, because I'm gonna ask you this.